I discovered the terrifying truth behind 10 haunting road trip nightmares. I never should have opened that door. What awaited me on the other side was a chilling reminder of secrets I thought were just stories. The hair on my arms stood up. My heart raced. This was not how my road trip was supposed to go. All I wanted was adventure, but instead, I found horror. Driving down that lonely stretch of highway, the world outside felt strangely distorted. Shadows flickered across the pavement as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air turned cold, and for a moment, everything was silent. Then came the whispers. I shook it off at first, convincing myself it was just the wind. But deep down, a knot formed in my stomach. I pulled into an old gas station, the kind that looked like it was stuck in time. Its flickering neon sign buzzed with a terrifying rhythm, casting eerie light on the cracked pavement. I could smell the musty, stale air mingling with the scent of oil and burnt coffee. My senses were on high alert. I felt the pull of something sinister lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence. A soft thud, then a dragging sound from the back of the station. My breath hitched. I glanced around. The place felt empty, but I could feel eyes watching me. I took a shaky step toward the entrance when the door creaked open slightly, inviting me into the darkness. My feet betrayed me. I stepped inside, heart pounding. The atmosphere was thick with tension, suffocating. There was a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye, just a shadow. I turned my head quickly, but it was gone. The hairs on my neck prickled. I felt it then, a gaze heavy on my back, chilling me to the bone. Footsteps echoed behind me, uneven and slow. My chest tightened. I wanted to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. I caught a glimpse of something, a figure, barely visible in the dim light, lurking just beyond my sight. Was it watching me? A scream clawed at my throat, desperate to escape. Just then, a loud crash sent me jolting back. I spun around, heart racing even faster. There was nothing, just shadows. The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang, plunging me into an impenetrable darkness. Panic surged as I fumbled for a source of light. Was I truly alone? I could hardly breathe. I was going to find out the truth. Something was coming, and I could feel it closing in. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness swallowed me whole, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. I fumbled in my pockets for my phone, praying the screen would provide at least a sliver of comfort. The blue light flickered to life, illuminating the claustrophobic corners of the gas station. The shelves lined with dusty snacks and rusting tools appeared more like tombstones rather than ordinary convenience items. The dragging sound resumed, a slow, deliberate scrape that set my teeth on edge. I turned toward the back of the station, the sound growing louder, echoing through the cavernous space. Hello? I called out, my voice tremulous and small. Silence answered, heavy and oppressive. Then, a soft whisper slipped through the cracks of the silence, winding around me like a serpent. Help! It was a chilling sound, fading in and out, distorted by desperation. A shiver danced down my spine as the temperature dropped further. I strained to pinpoint the source, stepping cautiously deeper into the shadows, the aura of dread tightening around my throat like a noose. The owls felt alive, whispering secrets that only the walls could understand. I longed to escape, to burst through that door and never look back. But curiosity sank its fangs into me, dragging me forward step by hesitant step. As I rounded the corner, I spotted something on the floor, a bloodied, soiled shirt with the name tag still attached. Sandra! I gasped, recognition flooding my memory. Sandra was the girl whose face had haunted the flyers stapled around town, the one the whole community had mourned after her disappearance. No, I whispered, feeling the walls closing in, the whispers intensifying around me, as if mocking my horror. Suddenly, a door creaked open in the back, an invitation tinged with malevolence. The whispers turned into chaotic cacophony, the fabric of reality fraying like an old blanket. I felt an insistent tugging at my mind, compelling me to approach. But a vision of Sandra's terrified eyes glared at me from the shadows, her mute scream slipping through the cracks, sending me stumbling back. And that was when the lights flickered on. A pallid glow illuminated a small room. I squinted through the haze, horrified by what I saw. A wall adorned with photos, all faces of missing people pinned like trophies, each accompanied by hashtags that dripped with despair. The same red paint dripped from the edges of the frames like blood. A hollow laugh echoed, sending chills through my very soul. He collects them all, a voice hissed from the shadows. My heart thundered as I felt an unmistakable sensation of being watched. Rotating slowly, I came face to face with the figure that had lurked just beyond my periphery. It was tall, gaunt, with skin like ash and eyes that glinted with a predatory hunger. I could barely breathe as it stepped closer, the dragging sound now unmistakable. Light was dragging its own body, a tarry residue trailing in its wake. The thing smiled wide, revealing jagged teeth that shone in the flickering light. "You'd make a lovely addition," it said, voice rumbling with sinister delight. Adrenaline ignited within me, and I turned to run, but I was too late. The door slammed shut, cutting off my escape as the room plunged back into darkness. I banged against it, desperation fueling every ounce of strength I had, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged as I heard a low growl behind me, the sound thick with anticipation. In the unsettled darkness, I could hear it breathing shallow, ragged, as if savoring the moment. My pulse raced, the chill of dread coiling tighter around my heart. I fumbled for my phone, praying to illuminate the space one last time, but as I triumphed and the light flickered to life, the reflection caught something terrifying. A dark figure stood behind me, eye to eye, its grin stretching wider, revealing that it was not alone. I gasped, realization crashing over me like cold water. The whispers may be the least of my worries now. There were more of them, and they were hungry. Unseen eyes pressed against the darkness, shadows shifting and multiplying into one indistinguishable mass. And as the darkness caved in, the door behind me opened with a soft, gentle creak, just wide enough for something sinister to slip through. The door's hinge wailed in protest, the creak echoing ominously through the cramped room. Instinct screamed at me to run, to push through the exasperating darkness and escape the hungry gaze of the looming figures behind me. But the opening before me bore an unnatural allure, a whisper of soft light cascading around the edges, beckoning me with a false sense of safety. My heartbeat quickened. A suffocating dread settled in my gut as I edged closer, the malevolent forces behind me shifting with renewed energy. I felt the air grow dense and murky, like diving deep into a pool of despair. The phone's blue light flickered, splaying shadows across the wall, and with it, I glimpsed them, the ghostly remnants of those lost, eyes hollow and pleading, drifting in and out of focus. "Oh God, Sandra," I breathed, squeezed tight by memories of her laughter that were now memories tainted with grief. My fingers brushed over the door frame, and as I looked back, I noticed movement in the periphery, flickering beyond the shadows, creatures cloaked in darkness and despair. They need not speak. Their presence screamed of torment and hunger. Summoning my courage, I darted through the door, my heart thudding against my ribcage. It swung shut behind me, the darkness swallowing the sound, erasing my escape. I emerged into a cramped storage room, shelves lined with dusty boxes and cobwebs that clung like fate to the crumbling walls. The air was stale, heavy with the smell of rot, and something indefinably a scent that clawed at my consciousness, gnawing at the edges of sanity. That I stumbled over an overturned box. As I caught myself, an assortment of flyers fluttered from the shelf above, scattering like trapped souls desperate for freedom. They floated in the dim light, each bearing faces that were eerily familiar, people I could have sworn I'd seen in town. Beside them, an old newspaper clipping stuck to the wall with peeling tape, dated long before my birth. They bore grim headlines that painted a history I had never bothered to learn. Chronicles of disappearances, families torn apart, photos of each person accompanied by a detailed account of the unknown predators that roamed the dark roads for their unsuspecting prey. My own name felt heavy on my tongue, a ghostly echo as I read about another victim, one whose life had been extinguished just moments from this very spot. No, this can't be. My voice trembled as I pieced together a tapestry woven not only with tragedy, but terror. They were all drawn here, lured into this very gas station, this very darkness cooked by fate's insidious simmer. Ahead, the room was long and narrow, but it opened up into a deeper darkness that seemed to throb like living flesh. I could hear them now, faint whispers slicing through the heavy air. "Join us, stay here, hide," they called, echoing across the void as if beckoning me to join their wretched gathering. But a sudden sound shuddered behind me like a thunderclap, fingers of shadow slithering through the doorframe that had just closed. I turned quickly, heart racing, legs trembling beneath me. The door splintered and warped, and I caught a glimpse of something watching me, a horror birth from all the darkness, cloaked in anguish. An elongated silhouette that seemed to twist and stretch, vanishing and reappearing at will. "Run," I whispered to myself, the word an incantation against the gathering dread. I pressed forward, stumbling further into the depths of the storage area, desperate to find a way out. Pushing aside boxes and dodging miscellaneous tools of despair, unease threatened to consume me as I felt the air grow thicker and more suffocating. Suddenly, in the oppressive silence, I heard a voice, clear yet sinister, cutting through the whispers. "We're waiting for you, don't keep us waiting." As the shadows began to coil, darkness thickening around me, I felt a chill brushing against my skin, a breath just behind my neck, followed by laughter, guttural and spine-chilling, that I bolted for a small door at the far end, praying it led to salvation. But as I flung it wide open, an impossible scene unfolded before my eyes. A mirrored reflection of the gas station, identical down to the last detail. Only it was drenched in a deep red hue, and filled with all the spirits of those who had vanished, their faces twisted in eternal agony. That laughter echoed once more, and behind me, a host of shadowy figures poured in, mouths stretching into grotesque smiles, promises painted in envy and avarice. This time, I didn't turn back. There was no point. I fled into that crimson nightmare, hoping against hope that this would lead to an exit, a glimmer of salvation. But I could feel them creeping in close, an insatiable hunger filling the air, drawing me deeper into their web of despair. As I dashed through the red-hued chaos, I realized with dawning horror that I wasn't the only one running. Dozens of faces, just like mine, rushed toward the same door, each one a reflection of terror and their own desperate escape. But behind them, something dragged itself forward, its breath chilling and mocking as it closed in on the souls it craved. And as I burst into an empty space that felt like eternity, I turned just once to catch a glimpse of the horror pursuing me, a figure, cloaked in shadows, growing larger, nearer, its eyes ablaze with an insatiable hunger. "Welcome home," it rasped, just as a terrible silence engulfed me and the door slammed shut again, sealing my fate. The sudden silence was deafening, the space around me vibrating with the remnants of the horrible laughter that had just echoed through the crimson expanse. My mind raced, grappling with the veracity of what I had witnessed, the shifting forms of those lost, the laughter that clawed at my sanity, and the encroaching dread that my pulse could hardly keep pace with. The sulphurous air crackled with unease, each breath more difficult than the last. I stood in what felt like an infinite void, the horizon smeared with the lifeblood of wretched memories. It was not a room nor a continuum of space. It was a canvas painted with hopelessness, smeared across the vast nothingness by the fingers of the tormented souls. Instinctively, I pressed my back against the slick, cold surface of what seemed to be a wall, hoping it would provide me with some semblance of safety, even though it bore none. Like a living organism, the pain radiated from it, sending tremors coursing through my spine. Every second stretched painfully, filled with shadows creeping ever closer. The whispers returned, a chorus of anguish that washed over me. "Help us! Help us!" they droned, each plea a sharpened knife against the fragile facade of my resolve. I followed the voices down a smattering of hallways that looped and twisted like the mind of a lunatic. The shadows, slick and alive, wormed their way into my periphery, dancing feverishly in the corners of my vision. Suddenly, one of the shadows broke away from the group, darting toward me with ravenous glee. I stumbled back, heart racing, but there was nowhere to retreat. Before I could even comprehend its movement, it lunged forward, younger than the rest, its face once beautiful, now marred by despair and terror. It clawed at my shirt like an infant craving comfort. "Please don't let them take me," it wailed, the sound more horrific than the guttural laughter of its brethren. "You don't know what it's like. They won't stop. They can't stop." Panic surged through me, a wild animal clawing its way to escape. I pushed the creature away. Its hands slipped from my grasp just as I felt the familiar dragon-like breath against my neck once more. A paralytic chill shot through me, and an instinctual scream escaped my lips, choking me amid the all-consuming silence. "Join us," it hissed in a soft voice, shimmering with mockery, slinking toward me like smoke. I clamped my eyes shut, desperately resisting their calls as memories floated like broken shards, teasing my sanity. The faces of those lost, the unspeakable fate I could foresee had already begun to claw at the fragile borders of my mind that in my confusion, I stumbled deeper into the omnipresent dark, desperate to evade the wretched souls and whatever hunted me. Then I saw it a door, slightly ajar, casting a flickering golden light that promised freedom. I barreled toward it, heartsick and void of hope, pushing past the grasping shadows that reached out, begging me to join their ranks. As I reached the threshold, a wave of warmth enveloped me, sending a fleeting sensation of safety coursing through my veins. My heart screamed with cautious optimism. Perhaps this was it, my escape from the perpetual torment. One last leap, and I would snatch my freedom from the looming jaws of despair. But just as I grasped the handle, pulling the door wide, a sickening realization struck. The room beyond wasn't salvation, it mirrored the very gas station I had fled, vivid and painstakingly detailed. The same dim lighting, the same squalid walls covered in grime, and leaning against the counter, the cashier I had seen previously, grinning unnaturally wide as he stacked the comforting candy bars that held a nostalgia I had never cherished. His eyes bore into me, gleaming in the dark, and a sense of futility washed over my soul. I was walking into the trap I sought desperately to shut behind me. "Welcome back," he said, his voice silky and cold, echoing through the eternity I would now be trapped in. "You weren't meant to wander away from this place." Just then, the door behind me slammed shut, echoing like a single final heartbeat in the air. The whispers grew louder, a choir of lost souls crescendoing around me. The cashier's gaze fell upon me, and I took a shaky step back, feeling the ground crumble under my feet. Then, just as the shadows began to converge once more, I felt an icy hand slip around my wrist, and the sweet laughter of that desperate child echoed again in the air, but now layered with a dire urgency. "You have to leave. Now." Before what? Each breath I took lessened my strength. The shadows were starting to envelop me, merging into one grotesque mass, and as their laughter climbed to a fever pitch, I realized I had become the hunted. And as the darkness began to close in like a maw of a hellish beast, pulling me back into the depths from which I had come, I caught one final glimpse of a face Sandra, but her eyes were hollow, pleading. She mouthed something just as the void erupted into chaos. "Help!" The darkness smothered everything, leaving behind a tormented whisper that ripped through my very essence. "You will never escape." Panic ripped through me like a tempest, a visceral instinct compelling me to fight against the consuming shadow that clung hungrily at the edges of my reality. The faces of the lost swirled around me, their contorted expressions reflecting an eternity of suffering, a warning I could not decipher. With every ounce of resolve, I twisted in the shadow's grasp, yanking my wrist freer, so I thought. The tendrils of darkness curled like serpents around my hand, dragging me back with insufferable strength. The laughter roared in my ears, a cacophony that merged into a single, insistent voice. It taunted me, revealing the futility of my struggle, entangling me deeper in its clutches. "Join us," the voices sang in unison, beckoning with twisted allure. With my heart thrumming madly in my chest, I lunged forward, desperation fueling my every move. I bolted, hands outstretched, ready to push aside the cashier who stood immobilized in his timeless grin. But as I surged past him, a hand shot out, firm and unyielding, and I was slammed against the counter, my breath forced from my lungs in a rush. "Your escape isn't here," the cashier said softly, his voice dripping with malice. "But look closely, they all want you to stay." His smile sharpened like a predator's, revealing teeth that seemed impossibly white in the dim light. The world around me shifted again. The once familiar gas station was now a grotesque caricature of itself, each item from the shelves transformed into a phantom memory. Candy bars twisted into severed fingers, soda cans bulged with pained visages, as if expressing their unspeakable agony. I caught a glimpse of my own reflection behind the cashier, tormented version of myself, eyes wide with terror, pleading for release. Suddenly, the lights flickered once, twice before plunging the room into shadow. The whirling shadows outside began to thrash violently, a storm of anguish that threatened to break in. An otherworldly wailing echoed from outside the gas station, a chorus of lost souls crashing against the walls, pressing in relentlessly. "No!" I shouted, hysteria edging into my voice as I fought against the grip of despair holding me against the counter. "I won't stay here." I couldn't bear to be ensnared any longer in this impossible nightmare. But even as I cried out, the shadows converged, leaping through the glass doors, turning the once inviting realm into an arena of torment. Within the darkness, dread seeped into every crevice of my mind, and I felt a bone-deep certainty settling in. The entity had grown beyond the gas station. It had taken root in my very soul. But there was something else, a pulsing, vibrating presence, separate from the shadows, clawing its way to the surface, determined to be felt. As the shadows thickened, separating into writhing masses, a single piercing scream broke through the sound of someone, or something, struggling against the tide. My heart sank as recognition surged. It was the child from before. In the cacophony, I could see the small figure, desperately trying to fight free from the embrace of darkness. "Please," it cried, flailing hard to break away. "You have to." Panic gripped my chest as I watched the child inch closer to me, fingertips reaching out desperately, as if I held the key to its salvation. "Don't help them." The cashier's sinister warning rang through the air, a siren's call against reason. "They'll only condemn you." But I felt the raw urgency in the child's call, a lifeline in a sea of despair. I knew if I reached for it, if I chose to embrace this innocent Suli, might find a way to balance the oppressive weight of despair that had anchored me here. Yet, as I wavered, something far more sinister began to manifest, an almost tangible darkness stretching towards the child, growing hungrier and more insistent. "No, don't come any closer," I screamed, my voice hoarse, fear clawing at every word as I reached out. "I won't let you take another one." With one last desperate effort, I lunged forward, both to escape and rescue, grasping for the child's small hand. Time seemed to freeze. In that moment, every face, every cry, every unspeakable horror faded, leaving only that one pure, pleading gaze. But just as our fingers brushed against each other, a searing pain shot through my chest. The cashier's icy grip tightened around my throat like a noose, and I realized with chilling horror that my own life force was being torn from me, drawn into the depths of the shadows, hungry for another soul. And in that fleeting second, the child's struggle transformed, the screams shifting into a mocking chorus, their laughter washing over me, echoing with my own despair. "Join us, forever," they hissed in sinister unison. While the shadows sealed my fate, I, in that moment of despair, as the darkness pulled me into its wretched embrace, I had one last flicker of thought: had I just sacrificed the only chance for redemption? And then everything shattered, plunging me back into an abyss of endless night. I awoke gasping in an oppressive silence, the crushing weight of despair replaced by a disorienting void. Shadows danced at the periphery of my vision, flickering like dying embers, but the cacophony from before had faded, leaving only the echo of its chilling laughter behind. The gas station was gone, replaced by an infinite stretch of black, a chasm swallowing me whole. That I tried to move, but my limbs felt leaden, as though they had been submerged in thick, viscous tar. Panic flared anew as I twisted, forcing myself to sit up. All around me was darkness and the remnants of that sinister laughter, teasing the back of my mind with insidious whispers. "You can't escape us. You belong here." The first hint of light emerged as a distant, pulsing glow. I stumbled toward it, every step more labored than the last. Each footfall sank into the ground as though I were treading upon fog, threatening to pull me under again. As I approached the light, I noticed that it cast elongated shadows, figures flickering just beyond my reach. Then, From the shadows, a figure began to take shape. A man, his features familiar yet nebulous, emerged as if summoned from my own deepest fears. He wore a tattered coat, the fabric threadbare and stained, his eyes a haunting mirror of my own. "Help me," he rasped, his voice like a dry whisper that clawed at my sanity. "I've been waiting for you. Who are you?" I managed to gasp, my heart racing as dread clawed at my chest. "What do you want?" "I know the darkness," he murmured, his gaze drifting behind me, as if searching for something caught in the tendrils of the past. "It feeds on regret, on the souls it claims." His words ignited a flicker of recognition. "You were in the gas station." "The one smiling with ease," he interrupted, his voice suddenly thunderous, echoing in the hollow space. "I was a part of that nightmare, like you. But I've seen what lies beyond the shadows. You must listen if you wish to escape." Every instinct screamed against trusting him, yet something deeper, a shard of desperation, pushed me closer. "What do I have to do?" "The key lies in the past. Your past. They want you to relive the choices you made. They want to feed on your guilt," he urged, taking a slow step forward, a glimmer of hope sparking in his sunken eyes. "You must confront your worst fears, your most haunting regrets. Only then can you reclaim your light." Before I could respond, the light flickered dangerously, plunging us back into darkness. The shadows swirled chaotically, their onslaught now a howling wind, desperate to extinguish the fragile glow. The man's features twisted in fear, and he screamed, "Run! Don't look back!" I turned, sprinting into the suffocating dark, the sound of his cries echoing behind me. The laughter returned, louder and more cacophonic, reverberating through the air as if the shadows had a life of their own. As I fled, spectral hands reached out, grazing my skin and siphoning warmth, reminders of my past failures and fears clawing hungrily at my sanity. "Face it." A voice howled, distorting into familiar tones. I stumbled, recognizing the voices of those I had lost, friends, family. Each sound a pang of agony and regret. Their faces flashed before me, melding into an unrecognizable yet haunted visage, blending with the shadows surrounding me. As I ran, I flashed back to moments of shame, the arguments, the missed opportunities, the final words I didn't say when it mattered most. Each memory was another ghost grasping at my soul, inhaling my resolve and leaving me gasping for air. As I turned a corner in the murk, I found myself facing an old, dilapidated house that had once been my childhood home. Its windows were dark and soulless, still harboring the ghosts I had so desperately tried to escape. A sickening sensation gripped my stomach as I realized this was where it all began, a cradle of my nightmares. A wretched cry erupted from within, sending a shiver down my spine. "Help us!" The door creaked open, revealing a corridor soaked in darkness, leading into the depths of my own history. I hesitated, toes hovering at the threshold, as shadows coiled around my ankles like thick chains. "Don't go in there." The man I had met called from beyond the darkness, his voice strained and urgent, barely cutting through the fog. "They'll keep you forever." But already, a figure stepped out from the shadows. It was a woman, her face obscured by darkness, yet her presence suffused the air with an unbearable sense of longing. "You abandoned us," she whispered, her voice a haunting lullaby that rocked my very core. "Don't!" I shouted, my heart racing as I felt myself being drawn toward her, the grip of the past threatening to pull me into her embrace, into the cold, unyielding depths of despair. Just as I felt the shadows tightening around me, everything wavered. The air pulsated with a charge, a moment of clarity piercing the darkness. Yet before I could turn to escape, everything exploded into a whirlwind of screams, my own voice among them echoing the truth that I had long tried to silence. And then the ground beneath me shattered, plummeting into an eternal void, revealing the abyss of my despair. I fell, spiraling into the depths, consumed by the darkness that had claimed so many before me, and I understood, in those final moments, that my reckoning was only just beginning. I fell through a churning mass of darkness, the screams around me fading into a distant echo. Time lost all meaning, stretched and twisted until it felt as though I was floating in pure nothingness, the fear clawing at my throat. I thought I would never stop falling, that I would be engulfed in this endless void forever. But then, in an instant, the air shifted. With a violent jolt, I collided with the ground, a hard thud reverberating through my bones. Dazed and breathless, I pushed myself up, blinking against the sudden brightness that encased me. As I regained my senses, I took in my surroundings, a barren road snaking through an expanse of desolation, the horizon smeared with colors that seemed oddly artificial, like a painting gone awry. The air was thick, saturated with an oppressive weight that bore down on my chest. Shadows flitted at the edges of my vision, barely perceptible wisps that danced and coiled in agitation. I stood alone on this stretch of highway, an isolated soul wading through the mundane horrors of an otherworldly nightmare, eye in the distance. A flickering neon sign danced irregularly like a siren's call. Curiosity compelled me to move forward, an instinct that drowned out the voice of reason screaming for me to flee. With every step, the asphalt beneath my feet pulsed, as if it were alive, throbbing with the remnants of those who had traveled this road before me. As I drew closer, the sign flickered into clarity. "Welcome to Stones Yendi." The words glowed ominously against the desolate backdrop. It was an all too familiar place, though I had never set foot upon this cursed highway. The darkness had a way of warping reality, of bringing forth memories I had tried to bury. That I stumbled toward a dilapidated diner standing on the roadside, its windows clouded and grimy. Flickering lights emitted an eerie hum, and the door swung open with a creaking noise that sent a chill rippling down my spine. Trepidation filled my veins as I crossed the threshold. Inside, the diner was shrouded in shadows, a graveyard of memories frozen in time. The counter was vacant save for a single, chipped coffee cup, the residue inside solidifying like the moments I wished to forget. A jukebox flickered nearby, its haunting tune echoing in the silence, each note taunting me with nostalgic familiarity. My heart sank as I recalled the last happy moment spent in a diner not unlike this one, with laughter and promise hanging in the air before the darkness came crashing down. There, behind the counter, stood a figure cloaked in shadow, the outline of a woman juxtaposed against the glow. My breath hitched in my throat as I recognized her. It was my mother, though her features were just out of sight, hazy and indistinct, like the memory of a dream. "You shouldn't have come back," she said, her voice wobbly as if carrying the weight of her own sorrow. "You must leave before it's too late, Mom." My voice trembled, fear entwining with a desperate hope. "Is that really you? I need help. I don't know what's happening." Her shadow shifted, and suddenly it was no longer her. A monstrous visage formed in her place, a grotesque parody of maternal love that peeled back layers of serenity. "You're here to pay your debts," it howled, laughter erupting from its twisted mouth, a cacophony that echoed with every painful choice I'd made. "They've been waiting for your return." I recoiled, scrambling back toward the entrance, but the door slammed shut, sealing my fate like a cruel twist of destiny. The walls of the diner pulsed, each breath cloaked in despair, whispering names and faces lost to time, and I could sense the presence closing in, spectral beings emerging from the shadows, their faces unrecognizable but exuding an aura of deep sorrow. "You led us here, now you shall join us," spoke a chorus of voices, the remnants of lost souls now haunting the very fabric of this place. They reached out with withered hands, ethereal fingers grazing my skin, sending an icy jolt of terror coursing through me. "No, I won't," I cried, panic swirling within my chest. In a panic, I turned away from my haunted mother, and as I blinked, the diner flickered between the realms of dreams and nightmares. The specters coalesced and twisted toward me, each lost face morphing into something grotesque, each pleading for release, for understanding. "Confront them." A voice boomed from deep within the shadows. I recognized it, the man from the void. "Face your past. It's the only way to wrench free. You must fight back." In that instant, time snapped. A searing pain exploded in my chest, and as I looked down, I noticed a gnarled hand extending from the diner's floor, coiling around my ankle like a snake, pulling me down into the abyss. With one frantic thought, I tore my gaze from the faces pleading around me, from the horrors that clawed at my sanity. "No," I screamed, clawing at the ground, but it was futile. Darkness yawned beneath me, a gaping mouth ready to swallow me whole, and a single thought stung my mind. If I surrendered, I would never escape their grasp. Then the lights blinked out, plunging the diner into a suffocating black, and I felt myself spiraling down once more, deeper than before, with the cacophony of haunting screams and distorted laughter filling my ears. echoing the certainty that my reckoning had just begun. The sound of silence enveloped me as I plunged into the depths of despair, the churning void swallowing the tumult of my thoughts. Momentary flashes of light flickered behind my closed eyelids, painting grotesque images against the darkness, a motley collage of faces twisted in horror, mouths open in protest. The cacophony echoed, but the cries morphed into whispered confessions, fragments of laughter slipping into manic giggles that sent shivers racing along my spine. As I regained my bearings, the ground beneath me hardened, and I felt a chilling breeze licking at my skin. The darkness faded, replaced by a dim, ethereal glow illuminating the space around me. I stood at the center of what appeared to be an abandoned carnival. Rusted rides creaked ominously in the stillness, their surfaces covered in layers of dust as if they had not been touched in decades. The air was thick with an acrid scent, the once vibrant colors now muted beyond recognition, as if joy itself had been bled dry. A shiver coursed through my bones as I took my first tentative steps, the ground crunching beneath my feet. Broken glass and dried leaves littered the ground like remnants of shattered dreams. Shadows darted past the edges of my vision, flitting between the skeletal remains of clown statues and defunct game booths. The laughter from the void echoed in my ears, taunting me from somewhere deep within the carnival's depths. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. To my right, a figure broke free from the shadows, a thin woman with hair cascading like spider webs clinging to her gaunt frame. Her eyes, sunken and hollow, pierced through the darkness, reflecting the ghostly glow. "You shouldn't be here," she rasped, her voice like dry leaves rustling in a lonely breeze. "They're waiting for what?" My voice cracked, barely managing to rise above a whisper as terror gripped my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the vision of her to dissipate, but the carnival rose around me, grotesquely alive. "You're dead, child." Her laugh echoed, a haunting sound that danced through the air. "They hunger for your return." With mounting dread, I turned back to the stalls, their signs peeling and faded. A stuffed bear, its button eyes cracked and lifeless, hung limply from the hooks. Suddenly, a deep growl rumbled from the merry-go-round, its painted horses twisting unnaturally in place. From the shadows, sinister figures emerged, indistinct shapes that writhed with an insatiable hunger, slowly encroaching upon me. "Join us," they hissed, their voices melding into a single, cacophonous whisper that pulled at my sanity. I stumbled backward, momentarily paralyzed by fear. It was as if the carnival was attempting to swallow me whole, its specters beckoning for my submission. "No," I gasped, struggling against the invisible weight that bore down upon me as I took a step back. "Stay away from me." A wild laughter burst forth from the darkness as the faces of the damned shifted and writhed, fragmenting into a kaleidoscope of anguish. The vibrations of their despair echoed through the very ground, resonating deep within my chest, and I could feel past memories which I had buried under layers of grief flooding back. A child's laughter, a carnival that once sparkled with joy, the sheer exhilaration of spinning rides swiftly darkening into nightmarish memories. Just then, a bell rang out, languorous and mocking. The echo carried moments of carefree happiness turned sour, bringing forth buried regrets and life choices that clawed at the remnants of my spirit. I spun, the shadows creeping ever closer, their whispers morphing into urgent demands. "Face your truth, or be consumed." The woman with the spiderweb hair shouted, her eyes glinting with an otherworldly intensity, unblinking and accusing. "You cannot hide." As moments passed, the specters coalesced into a singular form, a grotesque entity nearly unrecognizably a reflection of my own guilt and shame morphed into an unimaginable figure. Memories feeding it, growing it, until it towered before me, shuddering with Nita horror beyond comprehension. In that moment of sheer dread, the carnival erupted. The rides began to move of their own accord, the merry-go-round speeding into a frenzy, the shrieks and laughter of the damned merging with distant cracks of thunder. Every sound fused into a singular point of terror, pulling me closer to the entity that pulsated with my history, a visceral reminder of all I had evaded. As it stepped toward me, colossal and hungry, I felt the ground beneath me tilt and shift, the carnival spiraling into chaos. "No, I can't," I screamed, but my voice was lost in a tempest of noise. And just like that, the lights around me flickered, and reality began to dissolve. My knees buckled as the ground fell away, revealing an abyss that whispered promises of eternal darkness, promising to claim me, to gnaw at the edges of my fragile mind. Then, in the blink of an eye, everything went dark once more. I was falling, no end, no beginning, suspended in this terrible limbo, gasping for breath. But even in that void, I could hear Ida's slithering sound, insidious and unmistakable, a sinister laughter that echoed through the darkness, a promise that my reckoning was far from over. In the unfathomable gloom, time spun aimlessly and fear wrapped its tendrils around my heart. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, the silence stretching thin as I remained in that treacherous space between collapse and awakening. I gasped, my breath sharp and desperate, searching once more for solid ground or a flicker of hope. Yet, reality betrayed me, mockingly shifting like quicksand beneath my feet. With a jolt, the darkness broke, exposing my surroundings again. But this time the carnival felt different, alive and watching. The shadows grew denser, and the air thickened with unyielding dread, an almost sentient malevolence wrapping around my limbs, freezing me to the spot. The laughter returned, but now it was discordant, layered with agony and malevolence, and I staggered back, refusing to believe it was real. That I turned slowly, scanning the eerily distorted surroundings, heart pounding. The central tent loomed ahead, its fabric tattered and torn like the psyche of a tormented soul. A flicker of light dared to escape from its jagged seams, as if something was fighting against the darkness that craved to swallow it whole. My instincts screamed to run. Every fiber of my being implored me to flee from the grotesque reality surrounding me. Yet, an irresistible compulsion drove me forward, an inexplicable need to confront whatever plagued this twisted realm. I staggered closer. The entrance of the tent gaped open like a ravenous maw. A low hum pulsated within, vibrating against my chest, guided by whispers of promises and betrayals, echoes of my past drifting like fog. I paused, teetering on the cusp of crossing the threshold. The shadows seemed to beckon with outstretched hands, murmuring my name in steady, seductive tones, each syllable dripping with venomous allure. Step inside. Embrace your sins. They beckoned, echoing the last remnants of my past life, a melody woven with regrets, desperately clawing at the fabric of my sanity. Clenching my fists, I swallowed the bitter taste of fear clawing at my throat and stepped forward into the darkness of the tent. The air changed within, thickening to a stifling pressure that clung to my skin, as if I had entered the belly of a slumbering beast. The interior was a grotesque labyrinth, lined with mirrors warped beyond recognition. My reflection flashed before me, minuscule and distorted, each sliver seeming to hold a fragment of truth laced with horror. I turned frantically, seeking a way out, the hum now amplifying into a cacophony of madness, tripling in intensity. Suddenly, figures emerged from the shadows, grotesque effigies of regret taking form. I recognized a mosaic of lost relationships, each face a haunting reminder of elation twisted into despair. I saw my childhood friend, her eyes hollow and haunting, mouth agape in silent wails of abandonment. The laughter of my younger self resonated, echoing through the mirrors, pairing with the tear-soaked visages trapped in a carousel of suffering. Why did you leave us? Their eyes implored, voices melding into a wretched chorus, a dirge of betrayal echoing through the wretched space. I stammered, my voice failing amidst the haunting spectacle. Could they not fathom the choices that led me here? But I had to survive, I croaked, my heart pounding in my chest, each beat drowning in sorrow. The mirrors trembled, distorting the figures beyond recognition, their forms warping until I could no longer tell where I ended and they began. This place fed on guilt, every pulse drawing me deeper into its grasp, and I understood there was no escaping this fate. No absolution for what I had done. The air crackled as a piercing scream reverberated through the tent, raising the hairs on my neck. From the shadows, doors flung open like the jaws of some monstrous predator. A blinding flash exploded with blurring speed, a chill slicing through the air as something unseen roared within. Desperation surged. I turned, ready to flee, But froze as figures converged toward Medho's truth-seeking souls, now revealing their hidden horrors, twisted forms with arms outstretched, each seam in their shattered bodies threading together the pain of my choices. Join us, they cried, as one, 1,000 echoed voices beckoning me toward an irreversible fate. Suddenly, a mirror fractured beside me, splintering under the mounting pressure. A reflection of an endless void opened, wide teeth grinding against time itself as it beckoned me. I instinctively stepped back. The mirage of faces converged, clawing and twisting toward me, desperate to drag me into their chaos. I could feel their despair echoing in my bones, a visceral pull woven through the labyrinth of my mind. The lights flickered and dimmed as darkness crawled up the walls, concrete despair wrapping around my throat, squeezing with heavy insistence. Then, in an earth-shattering instant, reality covered itself over. The shadows merged with the fragments of my past, contorting into a singular, monstrous entity reflection of every fear I had ever faced. It towered, an affront to everything I had tried to escape. Suddenly, I saw the abyss would not wait. It was time to pay the price. Alone, unarmed in my truth, I was ensnared in the grip of a darkness far deeper than I had ever imagined a match could illuminate. I willed myself to scream. The swirling void opened wide, and the walls of the tent shifted, threatening to crumble into themselves. Just as my breath hitched, the world caved beneath me, plunging me into an infinite chasm. The last thing I heard was the echo of my own name, a dreadful whisper amidst the chaos, beckoning me into the depths of my worst fears. I awoke, gasping in an oppressive silence, the air around me heavy with an unsettling weight. It took a moment to adjust to the dim light that filled the space, which seemed to pulse rhythmically, as if somehow breathing. Dread pooled in my stomach, the echo of voices still haunting my mind. Amongst the prevailing quiet, there came a low, sinister sound that sent my heart racing, faint whispers rising and falling in a chaotic chorus. My senses sharpened. I found myself in a narrow corridor, brimming with an unsettling familiarity. The walls were adorned with photographs, faces twisted in anguish, eyes filled with despair. Panic surged within me as I recognized some of the people depicted. Their faces echoed in my mind, figures from the flyers I'd seen back in town. How had I arrived here, the center of this nightmare once more? Help us, I heard a whisper, and instinctively, I turned toward the sound. A flicker of movement caught my eye, leading me further along the corridor, deeper into the heart of darkness, a magnetic pull drawing me closer. Shadows danced around me, swirling like an angry tide, a symphony of lost souls clawing for release. Suddenly, the corridor opened up into a cavernous room, its flickering lights revealing an unfathomable horror. The space was filled with rows of old, rickety wooden chairs, each occupied by figures wrapped in tattered cloaks, their heads down. An overwhelming sense of dread consumed me. It felt like I had stepped into an audience awaiting my performance. The remnants of those lost stared back, speaking volumes without uttering a single word. The whispers crescendoed, wrapping around me, squeezing the breath from my chest. You let us here, you made us this way, they hissed, every syllable punctuated by unrelenting grief. Join us. In a fit of defiance, I backed away, heart hammering against my ribcage as I fought the suffocating grip of despair that threatened to pull me under once more. I stumbled, nearly losing my footing, and as I caught myself, I noticed a figure ablaze with lights standing at the back of the room. My heart twisted painfully. It was the woman I had seen glimpses of before, the one from the gas station, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. Don't listen to them, she shouted, her voice reverberating in the confines of the room. You can't let them draw you in. You must confront your past to break the cycle. Rising hope ignited within me, battling the coldness that gripped my spirit. With newfound resolve, I forged ahead, intent on reaching her. But as I took a step, the darkness clawed back, shadows snapping at my heels, trying to drag me into their depths. Suddenly, the laughter erupted, boiling over from the depths of the shadows, now swirling with malevolence, drowning out my thoughts and desires. Stay? Stay with us forever, a taunting chorus cried, echoing through the room as their grip tightened around my heart. No, I refuse to be part of this, I shouted, flinging my hands forward, as though I could physically block their desperate pleas. Yet, behind the figure, reality began to warp, twisting as the shadows pulled tighter, revealing glimpses of memories' long-buried faces etched in anguish, regrets clouding every inch of space. Each vision flooded me with guilt: the friend I'd abandoned, the love I had turned away from, the family I had left behind for fear of being suffocated by their expectations. I felt the full weight of my choices crushing my chest as I fell to my knees, tears spilling down my cheeks. "Face it all," the woman urged, her eyes shimmering with tears that mirrored my own. "This is your chance to break free. Acknowledge your place in this." Infuriated, the darkness shrieked, a cacophony of longing and rage, violently shaking the room. I could feel their desperation seeping into me like a virus, begging for acknowledgement, for acceptance. With a gasp, I pushed against the invisible weight settled on my chest and rose. "I acknowledge you. I can't change the past, but I choose to move forward. I choose to let go." Around me, the shadows hesitated, their relentless pull wavering. The oppressive aura in the room eased as I stepped back, feeling light push against the darkness that far outnumbered me. I closed my eyes, focusing on the choice I made every day to embrace life, to find joy amidst despair. But in a heart-stopping moment, I felt a shift of pulse, dark and insistent, slicing through the light with a disturbing clarity. "You can never escape us," echoed a voicey whisper from behind. Naturally close that I opened my eyes, and horror clawed at my soul. The woman I defended amidst this hellish landscape was not what she seemed. The benign glow that surrounded her faded as shadows reeled back into focus. Her smile morphed, revealing the sinister truth behind those vacant eyes. "Join us," she hissed, her form twisting back to that of a wretched being, hollow and hungry. The jolt of terror gripped me. "No," I screamed, backing away as the chairs filled with their lost souls surged forward, the figures morphing in unison, their laughter filling the air, louder now, more enraged. It was too much. The horror of revelation crashed around me as the shadows rolled in. A tug of anguish clutched my heart. I realized then, every face, every tortured soul, those lost to this darkness, had been part of my creation, my choices. The memories and shadows of my past had been woven into this nightmare, bound to me as tightly as I was bound to them. Everything shattered as the darkness struck me, and the cacophony erupted into a final chorus of despair. I was dragged back, screaming into the void, into the endless abyss, claiming everything I was and would becoming, a voice lost in time, a story never fully told. "Welcome home," the echoes washed over me, chilling to the core, as realization dawned, shackling my mind. And as the shadows consumed me, the final breath strained through my lips echoed the chilling truth, and I understood, even as all light faded away. I had never truly escaped. I was only ever their next meal.